Yeah. All right, I'm going to read this thing and continue. So number one, any interpretation that does not somehow relate to what is being displayed or being described to something within the personality or experience of the visitor will be sterile. Two, information as such is not interpretation. Interpretation is revelation based upon information, but they're entirely different things. However, all interpretation includes information. Number three, interpretation is an art which combines many arts, whether the materials presented are scientific, historical, or architectural. Any art is in some degree teachable. The chief aim of interpretation is not instruction, but provocation. 5, interpretation should aim to present a whole rather than a part, and must address itself to the whole man rather than any phase. 6, interpretation addressed to children. By the way, this is the one that I'm most interested in, the one that I talk to most with all of the NPS workers, VEAs, and docents. Interpretation addressed to children should not be a dilution of the presentation to adults, but should follow a fundamentally different approach. To be at its best, it will require a separate program. Yeah, I was thinking about that one the most because it's like, what is the difference between children and adults? Is there a fundamental difference at all? You know, yeah. And another thing on the train is that I've summarized each one of these. Yeah, but I'm going to continue because I'm just going to keep them. Yeah. So another thing, especially doing a presentation, is that you know, especially with people from Philly, is that they might not know, they might never that may have never gone to the Yale University Art Gallery, but it's in New Haven, designed, part of it designed by famous architect Louis Kahn. And you can see the interior, most of the interior looks like that because that's the Louis Kahn design interior. And they have the, I don't know, I was there with LXT, we talked a lot about the chairs that they have, because those chairs, those green ones, they're the Harry Botoya diamond chair, which is still manufactured by Herman Miller, I think. But the funny thing is that they're super expensive. They're like $4,000, but they're extremely dirty. Like if you look up, if you go up, if you sit in them, they're extremely dirty. They're very difficult to clean, and they're super expensive as well. They're like I think it's like retail is like $4,300 or something like that. I'm just gonna continue. Hold on, let me read this text because I think that's Christine. Damn, she's on my phone. I just sent you to it. Hold on. 1 second. Oh, we can't let Christine. She's trying to get on. Christine is about to go on, but yeah. So I was thinking about ideas for the introduction. So then I just had two Oxford English Dictionary definitions for the word design. So the general arrangement of the different parts of something that is made, such as a building, book, machine, etc. Second, the art or process of deciding how something will look, work, etc. by drawing plans, making computer models, etc. Yeah, so I was thinking of ideas for the intro. I mean, the intro of the presentation, because I think when I was coming up with the title, I was trying to have something that was almost deliberately ambiguous, because design can mean anything, right? Like if you're an engineer, you're a designer. If you're a fashion designer, you're a designer. If you're an interior designer, like Grace is about to come on the call, Christine, I think. If you're even if you're a curator, you're a designer. If you're, because design can, in a sense, design can mean anything. Like if you go back to the OED definition, this can, it basically can be applied to anything. And I wanted to keep it open-ended, even though most of the content is furniture design. But I wish Sarah was on the call because I was talking about not believing in fields, but yeah, I was thinking of some way to talk about some way for the audience or the visitor, or whatever you want to call it, to think about design in the abstract. And then also the because I was kind of psychoanalyzing myself, especially thinking about myself in the past year, and a lot of a big part of the reason why I even got interested in stuff like art history, and why I got re-interested in fashion and re-interested in stuff like architecture, is because I was thinking about basically politics. And because I've always been interested, well, because I've been a history person and interested in history largely to talk about political questions like nationalism, revolutions, and stuff. And I think a big part of my interest in design is the broader idea of the fact that design influences society in a lot of ways. Because I know a lot of people that are interested in politics, they a lot of people have a passing interest in stuff like urban planning, stuff like art history, even stuff like literature. But then with me, coming out of basically like a very, very, very rare school of politics, and yeah, I guess it's rare, and me being very, very politically active, and then I felt like me studying, like trying to study art history and trying to learn furniture design was almost like a part of my brain trying to get away from politics and trying to get away from, it was like a spot where I can be, where I can just kind of think and kind of forget about, even though I still am thinking, but I don't know how to explain it. But I'm thinking of, these are all ideas for the introduction, but I'm going to continue. Is Grace on? Is Grace on the call? No, Grace is not on the call. Where's Grace? Grace might not. Christine. Okay, so this is the actual the tour part. So the funny thing is, I was trying to find a map of the Yale University Art Gallery, and I couldn't find it. I know I have it somewhere, like one of the maps somewhere, but I don't have it with me. But I couldn't find a map. So I should preface by saying that most of it is in the American Decorative Arts wing, and then towards the very end, the stuff in the Contemporary Industrial Design wing. But most of it is in the American Decorative Arts wing. So the first object is this chest or trunk, and I guess it's like Jacobean style. But I think the point is that this is the first example of Anglo-American furniture in Connecticut. This is the very first, like, it basically doesn't get any older than this, and I was, because, we were in the furniture study, and it's the same thing, notice that's as far back as it goes, these trunks, these chests. And, I was at the Met Storage Room, same thing, PMA, same thing. It's like, it doesn't, in every single one of these museums, Wadsworth as well, the oldest thing that they have for New England specific, well, Connecticut, but even just early American stuff that is Anglo-American furniture is these chests. And one interesting thing that it might be worth talking about is the fact that a lot of these would have been painted very vibrant colors. So there actually is a chest like this on display at the PMA that has a picture on the label of how it may have looked originally with all the colors and paintings. And this chest dated 1640 to 1660. That's basically, as well, you know, even if you think about British North American settlements, you know, you can go older, but basically this is as old as it gets, you know, with stuff that survives in material culture. And another thing is that this chest is from Windsor, Connecticut, Windsor will come up later, but it's also the Connecticut River Valley, because if you remember the other projects that I've been doing, it relates back to the Connecticut River Valley, because the early American industry presentation, even the Thomas Cole talk about the importance of the Connecticut River Valley. And I see again in my head, it's coming up again. Then, oh, another thing is that, because in my head, I wanted to choose the first Anglo-American, Anglo-American example, because the Yale University, they don't have anything to my memory, because I haven't been there in a while, but they don't have anything from Connecticut that's older, because in that same room, they have this case, which it's full of really amazing Native American stuff. Like they have this Mississippian effigy pipe. It's like, I think it's like 14,000 years old. No, sorry, no, 1,400 years old, I think. She said her phone died. But they don't have anything they don't have anything from I'm calling Christine. They don't have anything from earlier. But anyways, so the other thing is that not in that room, but in the room over, they have a basket that is not, it's not Native American, but it is, to my mind, very likely influenced by the history of rush, the history of Native American baskets made out of rush. And that basket is this one right here, the top left. That is in the next room from the chest. And I think it's an interesting talking point, because one question that I've been thinking of personally is to what extent rush seats in early American chairs is influenced by the very long history of rush, personal goods, especially baskets, from northeastern Native American groups, especially wait, hold on, Christina's calling. What to mute myself. Okay. My fault. Christine is like trying to get on. I'm gonna send it to her on WhatsApp because she didn't get it on the text. All right. Anyways, that's my fault. But yes, I was so there's that basket. So I think it's an interesting talking point of, and it's something that I haven't done a whole lot of research into, but it's something that I still, I'm really unsure because it seems like it seems like to me it has to be the case that there's this huge history of rushed baskets and other goods made from bark or rush, and then the New England chairs or just early American chairs in general, they and other things like baskets, it seems like they're taking it up or at least influenced by it in some way, and all of these are from Yale University Art Gallery, but they're not these two are not, they're not from the Northeast. This one is Arizona, this one is I think Northern California, because but it's still it's an interesting talking point. I'm gonna have to figure out how to shave it off and conceptualize it. And then this one is though, but this one is from the Rhode Island Historical Society, but this is Narragansett. And it's not rush, it's bark, but it's a similar thing, the tradition of weaving. Anyways, I might need some feedback or like advice on how to weave that in, because it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. So then the next object is in the room over, and the object is the Chapin armchair, attributed to Eliphalet Chapin. And the talking point with that is that with this piece is that is the story of how this woodworker, furniture woodworker from what is today South Windsor, Connecticut, what was then considered East Windsor Hill, which was a part of East Windsor. Oh, Christine. Yeah, Christine is here. Yeah, so the story of how the woodworker from South Windsor, Connecticut moved to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia at the time, biggest city in British North America, actually one of the biggest cities in all of the British Empire, which is crazy because it's so geographically small. But Eric, John, if you remember Eric Lick, he was talking to us about it's like shape my eyebrows, they're going back though, but like the big city style of chair making, and Eliphalet Chapin goes there to learn the Chippendale style, that style at the time, big city stuff, and influenced by London and all of that Chippendale, and comes back to Connecticut. So he goes in the 1767, and then he comes back to Connecticut in the 1770s, and this chair is a product of how he took what he learned from Philadelphia, but he reapplied it to the Connecticut tastes, which is a huge talking point on everything that's written about the Chapins, but specifically about Eliphalet Chapin, is that he moved to Philadelphia, came back to Connecticut, which is kind of like this the presentation of the tour. It's like me on the train coming back to going to New Haven, like coming back to, but yeah, see, this is the funny thing, I took these photos on my phone, and I think me converting the files messed up the resolution, but these are the, I can, because I'm plugging stuff, but I can take better photos, but this is up front, up close. And then another talking point that I'm thinking of possibly incorporating is that at the Oliver Ellsworth homestead in Windsor, Connecticut, once again, Windsor, Connecticut, Oliver Ellsworth, who was this big Federalist politician guy, one of the most important pieces in his entire inventory is these Chapin chairs that he ordered from the Chapin family. And because, I was at the Oliver Ellsworth homestead and I spent a lot of time vacuuming the rug, vacuuming and cleaning these chairs and that rug and this entire thing. And I was thinking about maybe including it in the presentation. Obviously, I can't include it in the tour, but I was thinking about including it in the presentation in some way. But I'm not entirely sure how. And then, because the chair and the chair is a little bit more federal than the other piece that Ellsworth ordered from the Chapin family, and that was this couch, which is a little bit more, it's a little bit more like of the older Rococo style, because this would have been 1780s, late 1780s. So it's moving away slowly, but moving away from the Rococo style. I was going to say something else. I was going to say something else, but I completely forgot. But I can't remember. But yeah, so then this is actually the house of one of the Chapins, Alan Chapin, which is, it's still, it's kind of crazy that it's still up, because there's no reason that it's almost like it's called East Windsor Hill, but it's in South Windsor, Connecticut. And I was there once. I've been there once, and actually technically twice, because I went to see a Bill Huxley talk at the library there. But I don't know, it's an idea, because I have this photo because I was there with my friend Wyatt. Okay, so that's two objects. So we had the chest, because we had a bunch of diversions, right? So, but it's the chest. Then I had the idea about talking about the tradition of rushed baskets and other goods, specifically in the Northeast indigenous peoples. And then there's the Chapin. I have to figure out the Chapin. And then the next object is in that, it's basically in the same room, but it's like a hallway kind of thing. And it's these huge Newport, super expensive Newport pieces, mahogany Newport pieces. And my idea with this is the shell motif, because the Yale University Art Gallery doesn't talk about this in the signs and labels that much, but the Wadsworth definitely does. They talk about how Newport, Rhode Island was the big center of cabinet making in British North America, and that the styles that they came up with spread into Connecticut, particularly the Colchester area. And then at the Wadsworth, in that room that's right next to the Hudson River School area, that room has this huge mahogany chest from Colchester, and they talk about how the shell motif and that style from Rhode Island bled into Colchester. But it wasn't just Colchester, it was Colchester, Norwich, London, and yeah, but and especially, once you get into the later, into the late 17th century, the shell motif is all over. Like you see in the Chapin shell, you have that shell motif thing right there. And, the funny thing is that, because I never watch movies and stuff, because I'm, I don't really watch movies or like TV shows, but I was watching Star Wars, the Phantom episode 1, the Phantom Menace, I think like two days ago. And the funny thing is in the there's like a carpet in this little council thing with Yoda and all those guys with Mace Windu, and they had a shell motif in the carpet. I was like, it's funny because you see the shell types of shell motifs pop up everywhere. Yeah, Star Wars, I think it's because I was watching that movie, and to be honest, it wasn't good. Like I was like, it's not that great of a movie. But the thing that's really cool is the costume design and the architecture, because they have to force themselves to think. They have to force themselves to to draw inspiration from, Japan and India and like Tudor England and all of these things, but then they also have to force themselves to make it look like it's not from, the 20th century, that is not from, anyways, Star Wars. I was thinking about Star Wars, but yeah, so mahogany, and then I was thinking of bringing up the talking point of basically slavery, because and with the presentation, I can include photos that I can't of different exhibits, because I was at the Middlesex County Historical Society doing research on Simeon North, and they had a big, at least for them, it was a really big exhibit called A Vanishing Port, Middletown in the Caribbean. And it was all about how Middletown, Connecticut used to be a huge bustling port city in the late 18th century, early 19th century. And then, how that's how a lot of Connecticut's wealth developed out of trade in the British Empire. And it out of all the exhibits that I've seen, it does one of the best jobs of talking about the relationship between mahogany furniture and slavery. And I think I included this, I included this in the talk I gave at the American Clock and Watch Museum, because it also has the tall case clock. And it's one of the few museums that makes that connection as well. Because with my talk on clocks, I wanted to make the connection between how clocks are very, very high-end luxury items, and it's very high-end luxury items, and how that's related to slavery and merchant capital and slave labor and wealth and all of that stuff. And then another thing is that the Yale University Art Gallery did in 2018 or 19 have a really good lecture on mahogany and slave labor, which is available on YouTube. Yeah, so I was thinking that the shell motif and the Colchester style, the New London style, even though it's Rhode Island, it's a part of the Connecticut furniture. And it also is a good opportunity to talk about slavery and the mercantile past of Connecticut. And that's another thing that I've been reading about, because I found this book that is really, really good, but it's not very popular, on merchant wealth and Middletown and Hartford. Because I was doing research at the Watkinson Library at Trinity College, and I didn't even know that it's named after this merchant who actually was he helped start the Collinsville Axe Company, which relates back to the early industry presentation the Watkinson Library was named after that. And there was a bunch of connections that I didn't realize until not very recently, but like 5 months ago, like 4 months ago. Five months ago. Yeah, then obviously I have to talk about Hitchcock. So that's the next room over. It's like 2 rooms over. Actually, Christine's texting. Yeah, then I have to talk about Hitchcock. And so I want to show the room, right? It has the, I always forget his name, but the guy from Boston who had the steam vent, kind of almost like a predecessor to a lot of the plywood chairs that's coming out. He's from Boston, I always forget his name though. But then the Hitchcock chairs, I forget the one on the right with the cane, but then they have the Eli Terry clock and the Chauncey Jerome clock and the other shelf clocks. And it's a really good, it's a good space. But the side chair, and you know, I want to talk about industrialization, the beginnings of the machine tool industry, which Hitchcock is definitely a part of. Interchangeable parts, again, Hitchcock is definitely a part of. Picture of the factory. This probably isn't important, but geography, because I've been really thinking super deep about geography and industrialization, how all of the important industrial sites in Connecticut, because if you think about Connecticut being a crucible for industrialization in the entire United States, but the funny thing is that all of the important sites, like Simeon North's factory, Robert Johnson's factory, Hitchcock's factory, even Eli Whitney's factory, which is in Hampton, so it's kind of out of the way. They're not in the open centers. They're not downtown. They eventually will go downtown. Like the Cheney factory goes downtown. Colt goes downtown. All these places go downtown. But the geography, because I was at the Barkhamsted Historical Society, and I was spending all that time. And when I finished, I was like, let me just run up this hill. So I just ran up this hill, and then when I got to the top, I was looking around, and I was like, it really is in the middle of nowhere. Like there's nothing around. But I think I'm going to get rid of it because it's too complicated. It's a super technical thing about, and I still don't have any answers. It's more like a thing that's been bugging me a lot about this idea of geography and industrialization, specifically in Connecticut, and distribution points and proximity to ports and capital, like where people are getting their capital from, how transportation and the history of infrastructure and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's too technical, so I'm going to get rid of that, even though I really love the photo. Because another funny thing is I was on an important call. But this is the chair that they have. And the other funny thing, because we were talking to Eric Litke about this, about how this actually is a really bad example of a Hitchcock chair, because it is actually fancy. Like I know they call it fancy, American fancy style, but it is actually fancy. And by the way, when I'm actually doing this as a tour, I can't, it's not like I can't turn that into, because most people don't know what American fancy is, right? So I can't. But anyways, this is like actually fancy because it has the eagle, and it's not streamlined. It's not, the simplified design that Hitchcock chairs are supposed to be like. They're supposed to be with very simple slats. The gold on the turnings of the chair, they only go on the front. If you actually turn the chair around, and if you look at the back of the legs and you look, the gold doesn't even, on the turnings, doesn't even go all the way back, because it was like a speed thing, because they had to do them really quickly. and how they fit as well, and how it's all interchangeable. Yeah, but this one is fancy. Another thing, it's funny how museums do this. Like the museum at the Lyman Allen Museum, it's the same thing, where they have the Hitchcock chair and the signs and the labels. They talk about the origins of mass manufacturing, interchangeable parts in New England and Connecticut in particular. But then the actual chair that they have on view is something that it's almost like it's not a Hitchcock chair, because it's like this crazy John Constable like back painted on, like hand painted. It's not even stenciled, it's hand done. It's a similar thing with this. Like, to be honest, they have some really good Hitchcock knockoffs in the storage room, in the furniture study, which are better. Christine, what is Christine doing? Yeah, and then I should move on, but another funny thing is that I was in the Constitution Center a couple weeks ago, and they actually have a Hitchcock chair in them. They have it has the signature line and everything, but it's an Independence Hall commemorative chair. The funny thing is that this is the new era Hitchcock chair, because Hitchcock was completely defunct by the middle of the 19th century, but then it gets revived by the same guy that wrote that book on Alfred Hitchcock, John Jack Kenny. And I've met people that know this guy, Jack Kenny. The funny thing is, because another funny thing is that Alex T, the guy who was giving this presentation, he found that book that I don't know how they have that, but he found the book, the Hitchcock chair book, in some bookstore in New Haven. And funny thing that I learned recently is that book is probably not written by him. He, according to people who knew him very, very well, it was ghostwritten by someone else, which I think is hilarious. And it's still written poorly. Like, that book is written terribly. And it's the only book on Hitchcock chairs. Like, I'm talking to Matthew Bird about it. I'm talking to Eric Whitkeep. Like, there's no other book on Hitchcock chairs. There's other books that talk about Hitchcock chairs, like Nancy Boyne Evans' book on Windsor chairs, but the one book on Hitchcock chairs is so poorly, it's like terribly written. Like, it's almost a joke, and it wasn't even written by him. It was ghostwritten by someone else. Yeah, so the Hitchcock chair, because I think there's definitely going to be PA people who will see the presentation. So I thought I might include it. Then, okay, so this is where I run into a real problem, because I have done the talking point with Shaker furniture, but actually let me talk about that later. But so that my ideas for the next thing is to go further into the 19th century, and they have a side chair, but it's a Shaker chair from the Enfield, Connecticut Shaker community, which was a pretty big Shaker community. People forget it, but there was in Enfield, Connecticut, right on the border of Connecticut and Massachusetts, they had a pretty sizable Shaker community. And there's all sorts of interesting things going on with the chair, design-wise. To say nothing of all the talking points that you can bring up with Shakers and design, like the fact that how design was important to their religious beliefs and the innovations that they came up with, and even stuff like because we've been talking about industry a lot, right? And the importance that they placed on industry, like, Hitchcock, a lot of a big part of his factory was a couple circular saws, water-powered circular saws. And if you think about it, the idea of circular saws supposedly was pioneered by a Shaker woman in the 18th century. And so, if you just think about these things, like the fact that Shakers were a part of the history of the machine tool industry in the United States. And, Shaker communities from New Hampshire were coming down to the Springfield Armory studying machinery and going back up. Another funny thing is that I was in, this was, I think it was in March or February. I was in, I think I told John about this because there was this guy, they did something with the Enfield Historical Society, and he was talking about the Shaker community, the Enfield Shaker community. By the way, this is a photo of he was doing this presentation on the Shaker community of Enfield, and he was showing all of these historic photos, which are very, very rare, by the way. Every single photo of the Shaker community in Enfield, Connecticut is extremely rare. And they didn't have them until most of them until relatively recently. But I was, so when it came to the Q&A, my question was, did you find in your research anything about the Shakers in Enfield making a trip to the Springfield Armory, or any connection between the Shaker community and the Springfield Armory? Because if people are coming down from New Hampshire to the Springfield Armory studying machinery, you would think that the Shakers in Enfield, it's just that's a short drive compared to New Hampshire. Driving down to Springfield, that's like that's like a dangerous drive for the 18th century. For the 19th century. And everybody in the entire room was looking at me like I'm crazy, because people don't want to think about Shakers and industry. They want to think about Shakers and farming, or Shakers and corn pudding, or like corn soup. But I think it's because that guy, he said no, he hasn't seen anything, but I still don't think it's out of it's too out of the box to think that there's a connection. But anyways, so the reason why I'm struggling though is because I'm not sure if this fits though, because it is a good talking point. Like John and I, we were at the New Britain Museum of American Art, and they have that entire room with the Shaker furniture, and we were having a fun time crouching down on the floor, trying to get that angle where you can see just how ergonomic the side chairs are and the rocking chairs are. Because if you look how they're rushed, like with the Hitchcock chairs, it's all in the center, but with the Shaker chairs, they have it so that it's a little bit back, so it really fits your butt, and you can sit back in it really nice. It looks really comfortable. And just how advanced that is, especially with if you think about it, the ergonomics of it. But I don't know, to me, it feels kind of out of place to talk about. I don't know if I can fit it together, because I need to find a bridge between the early 19th century and then just contemporary stuff, like modern, not contemporary, but modern stuff like 20, because right now this Shaker chair is the bridge between Hitchcock and Marcel Breuer, Bauhaus type stuff. And I need some idea for bridging that gap between early 19th century and then boom, Bauhaus. And I can't find it. I was going through the collections and I still haven't found it. So I need ideas. So I'm gonna try to finish up soon, because I don't want to be bad. But right, so I'm going from Shakers, and then I'm taking you all the way upstairs to the contemporary design section. And another funny thing is that they actually don't have a Marcel Breuer chair up in there. They have a Marcel Breuer chair in the furniture study, but they don't have a Marcel Breuer chair actually in the Yale University Art Gallery itself, the museum. But I still want to bring it up because of this talking point of the history of chair design in the 20th century and how it was revolutionized by tubular steel. was revolutionized by um, all of these modern artists. Excuse me, all of these modern artists, and of course the IKEA parking lot, right? Because you have in New Haven because I talked about this right with Hitchcock as well, and it was like a running joke when I was developing this thing. It's like you don't need to go to Yale's, you know, you don't need to go to Winter, like you just need to go to the parking lot. But that you have the Breuer building, the what is it, the Pinarelli Tire building, and yeah, I mean, I need help on figuring out. Well, you have you have the Breuer building, and then you have the you know, the Seska chairs, and this is like the first cantilever chair ever. Period. Is the first one, and so I think the talking point is that Connecticut actually is a very interesting place to study. Yeah, that Connecticut is an interesting place to study Bauhaus architecture and as well as modern design, right? Because the next object is the Electrolux vacuum, which is, you know, technically you could say it's not Connecticut, but Laurel Gow, the person who designed it, he was living in Connecticut. Most of them were manufactured in Greenwich, Connecticut, or Old Greenwich, Connecticut. And I think the thing that really gave me the confidence to put it in here is that because before I came to Philadelphia, I was at the Old State Library. I mean the whatchamacallit, the Connecticut State Library, and they have in their museum, their little museum in the Connecticut State Library, they have the Electrolux vacuum cleaner in there, as well as stuff like coffee makers, you know, guns and stuff. They have, you know, behind that, that's a fan. They have all of these contemporary modern design stuff, and yes, but the Electrolux is the next thing, because it's the idea of contemporary design. And when I was on the tour with Alex T, what my conclusion was is that because we were in the space, right, we're surrounded by all of these greatest hits of industrial design, and then the conclusion was, okay, now you get to walk around these two rooms and you get to look at through the labels and you get to see, oh, what is manufactured in Connecticut? And, you know, of course, a lot of the silverware is manufactured in Connecticut. A lot of the chairs are manufactured in Connecticut. A lot of these design products, they're manufactured in Connecticut because of how advanced Connecticut was with its manufacturing capability, you know, even today, but especially back then, how relatively advanced it was. And, you know, you get surprised because you see a whole bunch of stuff from Waterbury, all the stuff from Meriden, New Britain, Hartford, you know, yeah, so I'm thinking of doing that. And then yeah, another quick thing that I didn't talk about is the fact that because obviously it's like an inside joke that I'm trying to bring out into it was like a really long inside joke about the IKEA parking lot, and then but I need to find a way to actually make it like presentable, like on a tour. I mean, it's true for literally every single thing that I'm talking about right now, but I need to find a way to get normal people to actually understand what the fuck I'm talking about when I'm talking about these things. But I actually didn't even realize that this is a hotel now, and it's called it's called the Hotel Marcel. So it's like a Bauhaus themed hotel in New Haven. It's crazy. So yeah, we need to sneak in though. Yeah, because it's like a hobby of mine nowadays. It's like sneaking into luxury hotels and like seeing how long. Because I haven't got kicked out yet of any, not lately, but I've snuck into like a bunch of different hotels just for fun. But they have, it's crazy though, like a Bauhaus themed hotel. Yeah, so that's what I have basically, and then the conclusion of the. So I'm thinking about conclusions, right? And because a limitation of this tour is that it's still mostly furniture, but I want to, there's a part of me that really wants to think about design, the design in scare quotes, the idea of design being a super universal thing, but also in the presentation, it being almost an ambiguous thing, or like, and the title being purposefully ambiguous and short. And I was thinking of, okay, well, if you were to, not limiting yourself to the Yale University Art Gallery, but just design period, what objects would you think of for Connecticut design? Like you personally, I would turn it to the audience. Like for me, guns, of course, super important. So in the middle, that's the Alicia K. Root prototype pistol, which they have at the Wadsworth Athenaeum. Super important, and I talk, in other presentations about the history of Alicia Root and stuff. Very important design, engineering, Donald Hoke, all of the stuff. And then at the American Precision Museum in Windsor, Vermont, right, because I had this, we designed this tour, no pun intended, designed this tour of New England industrial history. And, my friend who's a machinist, we took this tour. It was like we planned it all out, but we didn't have time to like go everywhere. But we designed this map of industrial history, starting in Haven, and then Middletown, Connecticut, and Middletown, Connecticut, and blah, 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 blah. And then the last final point is the American Precision Museum in Windsor, Vermont. And it also and they have this, hold on, they have this Bridgeport milling machine. And if you know about the history of Bridgeport milling machines, it's it's basically the most important machine tool of the 20th century, right? Because I was talking to Emmett, right, about, Emmett was talking to me about how, the story, right, of Adolf Hitler, having this list of places in the United States to bomb, and it's like Washington, D.C., New York City, and Bridgeport, Connecticut, because of the Bridgeport milling machine, and this entire history of the machine tool industry of Connecticut, right? And like Bill Halsey and I, we were thinking of writing this article on the machine tool industry, and me talking to my father, and he didn't even know that Bridgeports were made. Bridgeport is named after Bridgeport, and people, a lot of people don't know, and machinists, these people don't know, and that aspect. And then I was on because I follow IAMBE on Instagram, and that's because that's a luxury fashion company, but it's owned by this guy Travis, who's from CT, and he's young as well. He's like 20 something, and his bag got I think they had it actually in the Wadsworth. They had it in the Wadsworth Athenaeum. Because I follow on Instagram. So, but I was thinking about fashion and Connecticut CT, and this is because this takes us up to the present, right? With the bag, and uh, like a Black-owned fashion line from a guy from CT and the Wadsworth Athenaeum, and obviously I like clothes and stuff, so I had to include clothes. But yeah, I think that's it. That's like a big brain dump. Yeah, that's basically what this entire thing has been. It's been like a brain dump for me because it's like I need to make this good, but it's yeah. So a run through is the title, Tilden's 6 principles, situating the context and the setting and the space, geography, whatever you want to call it, the dictionary definitions of design, thinking about myself, why is it that, because for me, like the biggest thing was realizing in the past year is realizing that I have a super, super low, or that I had a super, super low visual literacy. And then me just trying to become better at thinking about these things. Then there's the chest, Connecticut River Valley, first Anglo-American furniture, ? The history of rush products in Northeast Native American cultures, Chapin, Connecticut guy going to Philadelphia, coming back to Connecticut Rococo, Oliver Ellsworth, possibly include that, East Windsor Hill, Newport, shell motif bleeding into Connecticut, Colchester, New London, shell motif in Chapin as well. Shell motif has become popular. Newport, all of these places, mahogany, slavery, trade, wealth, mass manufacturing, Hitchcock, yeah, I'm just gonna stop here because just trying to do something. Yeah.
So can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. All right. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot to think about. Right now you have many, many different concepts and conceits going through here. Part of it is materials, part of it is surfaces, part of it is production processes, some of it is consumer, like who are these made for, so issues of class and so on are at play as well. So I think you're going to want to pick one of those or two at most, because it's just going to be too much to try to negotiate all of those within a talk. Like people aren't going to be able to follow it. They're going to feel like they're in this kind of tornado of ideas. I think for me, as I was listening to your talk, also, I appreciate your introducing Tilden's 6 principles, and I think that's a really interesting, I think that's a good way to think about what you're trying to do with your talk, but you don't need to like let your auditors into that, into your engine house, like your talk is just going to do that. Like you don't have to tell them that this is what your talk should be doing, right? So, so I think what was most interesting to me, I was really interested in the issue of materials. I was really interested in the issue of surfaces. So like the chest, you know, that's made from local woods. I mean, I don't know if you want to do one or the other or don't want to do this at all, but I was thinking about how that's made with local woods. And then we get to the, you know, and then we get to the chest, or not the chest, but the desk and bookcase. And that's coming from Honduras or Santo Domingo. You know, it's this material that's being kind of pulled in from somewhere else. And then it's what's being used is this style. I mean, that's kind of I mean, you were talking about Newport, but like this is still very much in a kind of Chippendale style. So it's like this kind of local idiom of another, like, so using materials from somewhere else, using kind of design ideas from somewhere else, but then bringing that all together and creating a very particular and local idiom. So maybe, I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe what's of interest is how, you know, because like the chest, of course, that's also, I mean, that's coming from England. That's a design style that's coming from England, but it's bringing it in using local materials and creating this sort of, this local idiom. The same thing with the Chapin armchair and the desk and bookcase. And then, you know, so maybe that can be the organizing conceit, like kind of taking, whether it's taking materials or design or both from different places, but then adapting them to its specific location and kind of trying to think through the implications of that, like how it kind of shifts or changes as it kind of mutates, as it moves into a particular location, and there's these different forces that kind of press up against each other and shape the design, take it sort of in a different trajectory. Does that make sense? I can't hear you.
Yes, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, because if you remember back to when we were, I can't remember what week it was, but in your class, and there was that footnoted article by some Dutch guy talking about the influence of Dutch material culture on Sri Lankan material culture. And I was talking about how there's not enough discussion about the mixing of ideas and mixing of cultural mixing of culture, because, you know, obviously that part of the Indian Ocean is all about it's all about cultural trans communication, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
you know, it's almost like there's nothing, you know, I was thinking about this today, actually. It's almost like there's nothing, because I was thinking about the day previously, I was reading about West African batik design, and you know, thinking about how, you know, Sri Lanka has its own batik style, but it comes from individual, and how it's almost like there's nothing. Today I was thinking it's almost like there literally is nothing in Sri Lanka that is like indigenous, whatever. And you know, thinking back to, you know, talking with Bill Housley, him being the type of person to, he's really gung-ho about emphasizing like these are indigenous design. He was really interested in the indigenous designs from Connecticut. And even though he's very aware of the fact that a lot of this stuff is coming from elsewhere, but I definitely feel you on the origins of materials and the origins of style. Yeah, I think that can be a really interesting idea to use as a framework for developing the tool.
Yeah. So I think that's really, I think that might be the most, I don't know, productive. I mean, I think what it gets at too is that there's not like this, I mean, there's this kind of, I mean, we start to see this, I don't know. I think we kind of started seeing arts and crafts, and then up as we're getting into like sort of modern design, this kind of notion of a kind of purity or something. But there's no purity of design. There's no purity of style. There's this kind of, you know, this interplay and this interchange that I think that you could really examine in a fruitful way with objects at the Yale University Art Gallery, but also just keeping, you know, so you have this kind of, you have the center that is Connecticut, and then everything kind of, you know, how it kind of feeds in and shifts once it gets to this particular location, and it's going to shift differently, like in a different location. But if we're using Connecticut as sort of the center of this you know, using that as our specific locus. The other thing that I did come to mind, and this is less perhaps Connecticut specific, but I was just really fascinated thinking all of the objects that you were showing, there's just such an interesting play with surface. So like the chest, that would have been painted. The armchair, the Chapin armchair, that would have been, the Chapin armchair and the Newport desk and bookcase, that would have been, I mean, there's a lot of attention paid to the surface, even though, you know, it's not painted, but like this sort of glossy quality of the mahogany, the way that, you know, kind of this sort of reflective quality, but also the sort of richness and depth of the material. I mean, that was one of the main sort of things that was valued about mahogany. And then, you know, we get to the Hitchcock chairs, which are this, you know, the painted chair, that sort of the way that decoration was added, and then the Shaker chair. You know, Shaker design is all about like honesty and construction and appearance. So I think that there's a way to think about. This is less articulated in my mind, but a way to think about how surface is conceived, and how that and the sort of the effect that these objects have on the viewer, on the user, how they I think, but that's less Connecticut specific and more just sort of one of my own predilections and curiosities. So so there's that. But that's those. I'm sorry to be like having to like rush this, but so that I think those are kind of those were the two sort of major strands that I was experiencing as I was listening to your talk. I mean, I think what it is like, right, you're right. Like this was basically a brain dump, and then what you're trying to do is dig through it and find the strand that you can kind of, you know, create your narrative around. And so right now you have like lots of different narratives and lots of different thoughts, like kind of going off into like, you know, Star Wars and vacuum cleaners. But I think once you kind of see why you're, it's really just interrogating like, okay, well, why did I pick these objects and put them together? And so for me, I'm just giving you like the narrative that's coming to my...
The funny thing is that originally I picked them because I was on that train, and those were the ones that were coming to my mind.
Ah.
Because I knew basically every single, I don't want to guess myself up to it, but like I knew basically all the highlights in that entire wing. So those were the ones that I went with when I was on the train. And then when I was actually in there in person, as well as when I was sitting down here going through the collections, those were the ones that worked, and they still are. But of course, there's another big problem, which is there's a big actually I can just stop this here. But there's a big problem with the fact that there's so many chairs and there's so much furniture, and there's not, because it's only not until you hit the 20th century that you get, I mean, there's the baskets, but it's only until the 20th century that you hit the vacuum. And if I'm gonna have the title design, I mean, I could always make it, I don't have to have it ambiguous like that or open-ended like that, but it's still all chairs and furniture.
Well, I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily a problem. I mean, I think, I mean, to try to cover all types of design in, what is essentially probably going to be, a 40-minute talk, that would be
Mhm.
Impossible. But
Mhm.
so you need to have
A focus.
yeah, you have to have a focus. You have to be selective, and it's okay if it's kind of arbitrary, like they have a great collection of chairs, so you're going to focus on chairs,
Yeah.
so I think that that's fine. But I mean, there's a lot that you can, I think, even if you have to sacrifice breadth, that will actually benefit the talk, because you'll be able to really kind of explore some ideas in greater detail and in greater depth, and really make people see these objects in a way that they might not have seen it before. Like, the other thing that I was thinking about too is like how these different types of objects demand a different sort of bodily engagement. Like how you kind of spoke to this when you're talking about the shaker chair versus the Hitchcock chair, or like how does like the desk and bookcase, the way that it's this drop down desk, and then there's probably, once you open it, there's all of these different sorts of cabinets, and there are probably hidden compartments, and this how you engage with these objects is also something that I think is really interesting, like that they demand a sort of a specific bodily response from the user. So that might be another, that's I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just adding some more things to think about instead of like helping you narrow it down. Maybe I'm making it broader, but anyway.
I also don't want to make, I don't want to make the visitors want to touch everything and try to sit in it, because you're talking about talking about surface and talking about ergonomics.
Yeah, no, I know that's the trick.
Actually, you can sit in the furniture study. They will, if they know you, like because John and I, because we were with Eric at the furniture study. Have you been there, by the way?
Not for a long time. So
yeah, so we were there, and Eric is supportive. We might be able to. We didn't know, but
all right. Well, I actually have to go, so I'm sorry that I'm like, first of all, sorry that I was late, and second of all, sorry that I have to go. But yeah, so I'm really curious to see how you decide to develop it. I mean, I think there's some really interesting stuff there, and it's really just trying to like pare away the stuff that's not necessary to tell the story you want to tell, and really kind of focusing in, and I think it'll be a really interesting presentation.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming. I honestly, seriously though, I really appreciate it that you.
Sure, of course.
And that you had to sit through it, because this is like a brain jump. Telling you to step into my dream, and then hopefully we can manifest it. I can manifest it.
Yeah, well, good luck, and I'm sure I'll hear from you later.
All right. All right. Good night.
Good not see you, Jean. I mean, not good not to see you, but good to hear your voice. I hope you had a good summer, and I'll talk to you guys later, okay? Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
All right, John, do you have any advice for me?
I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, I guess what you mentioned about kind of focusing more on, because you definitely have a lot of ideas you want to talk about, so definitely narrowing it down to something you want, and just keeping it more concise. Um, I don't really think I have any more in depth to add that was a bit finished already. But I think it was good. I think it was good.
Mm. Yeah, but good enough. Good is never enough. Good is not enough with me. It has to be even
Right, of
great is
course.
not enough. I have to be the best. You know, it's like I can't be settling for mediocre.
Right.
I can't be. No, I can't. I can't. I can't. I need to make it the best with every single thing.
So how long have you been working on this?
I'm not gonna lie. I was procrastinating on this thing. I basically came up with because the idea is old. Because when I was talking about being on the train,
Right.
that was nearly a month ago. But I didn't start working on the PowerPoint until like 3 days ago. And I'm not gonna lie, like most of it was put together kind of last minute, like me just fixing like putting up all the pictures, fixing everything.
Right.
Actually, you know what is hilarious is that I completely forgot to mention that I did find a mistake. I found a mistake on one of the labels. Whoops. Hey. You can still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, hold on. Uh-oh, I think my thing just froze. Oh. Whoops, hold on. Okay, I don't know. I don't know what they did. But anyways, I found a mistake on one of the labels in the Yale University Art Gallery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was a it was a what was my yeah, I don't know what's doing that, but you can still see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, I don't know why it's doing that. Now I'm just forced to not look at the controls. But I found a mistake in the contemporary design section because there's this Norman Bogettis Manhattan cocktail set and was mislabeled. And I went to the front desk about it, and then my friend texted me a picture of the label replacement. Like they took a cutout piece of paper and then they put it over the incorrect label. And when I got that text with that picture, let me tell you, I was so proud of myself. I was like, yes, I made it. I made it into, I actually, this time really made it into a museum because I actually got it changed. Like it was like my little backdoor way into getting into the Yale University Art Gallery. But yeah, I need to find a way to make, because another thing about this is that I want to make this friendly to children, not even children, but just people, young people and people with no sort of background on this stuff. Because, you know, at the end of the day, I don't have a background. Like I was, you know, actually yesterday, you know, I was texting my friend, like, you know, joking with him, like, I need to become a material culture expert in 24 hours. Or like, you know, I'm gonna get dissed for doing this thing because I'm not a woodworker. You know, I'm talking about chairs, but I, you know, can't use a lathe, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But at the end of the day, I have more than enough material. I have plenty of material because you've seen, right, all of these ideas. What I need to do is work it down and, you know, make it pop.
Right.
And I should have mentioned this with Professor Athens, but I think one of the things that is going to help me as well is telling stories. Because people like stories, and stories can be a good window into this stuff that only people like me really care, you know, care to read into. You know, people, most, not 99.9% of people do not actually care about shows. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, people don't really care that much about, actually, you know, and I shouldn't even, it's not even about people not caring. It's just that most people are not, it's not even that they don't care, but it's more so that people, you know, that's not what's hot right now, is it? You know, people, you know, someone talking about chairs, someone talking about wood, that's not really what's going to grab people's attention right now. That's not what's hot right now. But what can make that relatable to people? What can make wood? What can make chairs? What can make tubular steel relatable to people is when you talk about it in the context of a story that they can relate to. And that's
Right.
something that I've been picking up on with interpretation and historic interpretation. Yeah. There's also another aspect of public history that is present throughout all of this. Like I was talking about my relationship with the people at museums,
Mhm.
and, you know, my inclusion of that Bridgeport from the American Precision Museum, and that museum that has a whole interesting history of how it started. It was basically this guy, Edward Bettison, feeling like the Smithsonian wasn't even doing that good of a job, and how he could do a better job than the Smithsonian at telling the story of industrialization and mass production and interchangeable parts. And that part of me that is super interested in public history, and that's also a key thing that's driving me throughout all of this.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, any more thoughts?
Um. No, not really. Sorry, I wish it could be a bit more constructive, but
No, that's fine.
yeah, then I think I think you already made some good points, and yeah, I think it'll be fine, honestly.
Yeah, I know it'll be fine, but that's not the goal. The goal is to not make it fine. You know what I'm saying?
But I
The
know.
idea of
I,
it's like good enough is not good enough for me.
of course, that's not what you know what I mean.
Yeah, it'll be straight, but you know, because I always have to find a way. It's like, you know, I was telling you, right, when we did that practice run of the coal presentation, like straight up, that thing was ass. Like it was terrible. Like that thing was terrible. Like I honestly was wondering what was going through her head, is that it was trash, like straight garbage. And we had like 5 days left before the thing, and you know, I made it work, and it went well. It went really, really well, because I had to like lock myself into a room, and you know, I made it, you know, I made it click basically. But that's kind of the same thing I need to do with this. I just need to figure out a way to make it click, make it pop, make it jump out, get people into it. Well, it's getting late, and I'm not gonna my voice, because I'm not good at speaking, and especially with this chair and my posture. Yeah, I'm so my voice. I definitely was not blessed with a good voice. Period. Like my vocal cords, like yeah, I'm feeling my voice strain a little bit. So
It's fine. I get it. Yeah, we can end it off here.
yeah, you know, another thing is I'm definitely not like an extroverted person. Like I'm a very soft-spoken person. Um, you know, I'm not. You know, I'm not a very verbal person. Period. Which is part of the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to be good at not just the, you know, studying and researching and reading part of it, but I want to be good at the communication part. Not even just writing, but just being able to do it in a format with spoken word, or and to say nothing of me actually leading a group and having to connect with people face to face and having that connection. And you know, when you're giving a tour, anything can happen. You know, there might be a stray person who's not on the tour who comes in and starts asking questions. You know, anything can happen. Somebody could trip and fall. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks very much for coming. Honestly, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess have a good night then.
All right. Take care. Be
Yeah,
safe.
you too.